Today, we're delving into the evolving world of vintage resale, online commerce, and the power of digital platforms with two standout entrepreneurs, reshaping what it means to run a successful and modern business. Together, these two represent a new generation of entrepreneurs, tech savvy, resourceful, and unafraid to color the lines outside of the box. Today, we're tapping into their stories, their strategies, and their vision for where the industry is headed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. On deck with me here, I got two of my boys here, Cooper Jones, Russ Bills. How you doing today, fellas?
We're
Sound
good.
good.
I'm good. I'm good.
See, you came prepared and ready already, Cooper. Look, you got the backdrop ready. You're like, I know he's going to talk to me about that drop you got right behind you here.
I got him. I got it.
We'll get in that in two flashes of a second. But thank you, fellas, for joining me here. I really am excited to talk to you. For one, I don't feel old, but I'm like twice your guys' age. But I think we have so much in common at the same time. It's like entrepreneurship. It kind of weaves through all that, right? It kind of overpasses all of that. And so some of what we want to get into today is for people that are maybe my age, but people that are your age, people that are just in the entrepreneurial space and they're looking to tap into what it means to be an entrepreneur. You guys are already kind of carving out your own niche, your own path in what you're doing. Cooper, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've been running in this lane already for a couple years, right?
Yeah, about 2 years. I've been doing it full time. Lots of different platforms and different ways of selling, but just trying to figure out exactly, what path is the best and what path is going to sustain in the future.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because I don't want to jump the gun too far ahead. So maybe I rewind it back a little bit. You've been in the game for about 2 years now, full time. Russ, as long as I've known you, man, you've been an entrepreneur yourself, doing all kinds of various ventures, right? And so this latest stretch is kind of a run of it. But tell me about yourself too. When did you get started in this space?
Yeah, well, my parents are big entrepreneurs. I've been kind of surrounded by business my whole life, and I've been selling and trying to make money wherever. But back in 2020, I found a box of my dad's old clothes, like Jordan stuff, and then I found this big market for everything, and I was like, "Whoa, what the heck is all this?" And plus, it's cool. And so I stuck with it off and on, but kind of like Cooper, within these last couple of years, it's where I've kind of go full time into it.
Yeah. Well, Cooper, what about you? When did you finally you're like, hey, there's a market for this. There's a space to jump into this, and you ran with it.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of like Russell in 2020, I started selling sports cards. I was super into it when I was a kid, and then all of a sudden, like, the market went crazy around 2019, 2020. And so I started doing that, realized really quickly that it was not as sustainable, meaning the market goes up and down way too often. That like a pair of shoes can't break their ankle and lose their value, kind of thing. So it's hard with cars, and so I've always liked clothing too, like fashion. So I knew that is kind of like fashion clothing is kind of recession proof. And so I started doing that, and I really like always going to thrift stores. And then just like Russell found out it's a big thing. And so kind of running with it, vintage is my passion for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that it's speaking to me is that you guys found a need in the market and you were able to find some sort of a passion that aligned with it, but it wasn't the other way around. I think there's a mistake there that we sometimes make as entrepreneurs is the thing that we like so much, we want to make it into a business, and it doesn't always work that way. But you guys are kind of learning how to pivot, and I think you kind of but you were fortunate to come across a market that's already hungry for something. It aligned with an area that you were familiar with as well, and you're finding a way to make it work. It doesn't just happen though, right? It's not just flick a switch and everything's working and money's flowing in and you're buying the Lambo next. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
I know that, Cooper, you're probably constantly on the game. You're constantly either out there shopping as well. I know you're into the live shopping space as well, which is one thing I want to tap into, because I think it's like a revamp of everything that has happened before. There's nothing new under the sun, right? So it's like QVC 2025, and people are doing all this shopping online now, but it still hasn't hit like a critical mass where people are doing it. And so you guys are kind of early adopters to the game. Um, let's talk about that for just a second, with the online shopping aspect of it, because I know it's something that you're constantly on and doing. It's one way that you're moving product. How did you land in that space, and what's one of the main platforms, or the main platforms, that you're leveraging?
So right now, Whatnot is the biggest live selling platform, for sure. eBay has kind of tried to do a couple live selling things, but it's definitely not nearly as popular as Whatnot. So Whatnot, like Gordie was saying, it's basically a live selling platform where people go on, they show clothes, or literally you can sell anything there. And people in the room are auctioning and bidding, and whatever it goes for. Whether it's worth $100 and it goes for $1, it doesn't matter. That's just the name of the game. But I've always watched like YouTubers, reselling YouTubers and things like that, and they started, selling on Whatnot, and so they would share a link with like a discount code or whatever, and so that's how I got onto Whatnot.
Mhm.
And I bought for about a year before I even started selling there, because it's a really good place to buy stuff, especially when things are going for cheap and I can resell them for more. But I was contacted by a representative of Whatnot, and they wanted me to join and start selling, and ask me a couple questions. And so they had my back when I was starting to sell a little bit, and then it just kind of blew up from there. It's still kind of off and on, for sure. It's kind of a finicky space, because depending on where the economy is, really depends on if people will bid or not.
Sure.
And so I've been kind of more going back towards eBay, because I feel like it's a little bit more sustainable. Just like moving product at their full price rather than moving product at the smallest price.
Mhm.
So it's kind of back and forth. I do think that live selling is the future. There's an untapped market in China. I think China, the market cap for live selling is like 20 trillion or something like that.
Oh,
It's
wow.
in the trillions. It's crazy.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, it hasn't been tapped in yet. So
Mhm.
once that gets tapped in, I feel like it'll get huge. I mean, Whatnot still it's in its infancy.
Mhm.
Even though it's so popular, it's still in its infancy. The Whatnot platform is really good. Like the people behind it, they for customers and sellers, they really do well with their service. So I appreciate them. It's just about, I have two kids, I have a wife,
Mhm.
I need sustainable income, and so I can't rely on, people bidding the right
Yeah.
price for me to feed my kids, type of thing. And
Yeah.
so it's it's a little bit finicky right now. I still love it, and I still try to do it, but yeah, it's kind of finicky. So
Yeah. Well, you're talking about, casting your bread upon many waters. You got to have multiple streams, and, willing to pivot when you have to pivot. And that's
yeah,
one of the things that I see you're doing. You're tapping into an area of opportunity that just hasn't hit mass adoption yet. And so people are kind of testing the waters with it. They're out there playing with it, trying to figure out what this thing is, if it's real. People have been talking about it for years and it's still around. It's like, yeah, it's real. It's not going anywhere, but mass adoption just hasn't happened yet. And so you stick to other staples that where there is more of a steady stream of income. So I think that's wise. I think it's smart. It speaks to misconceptions about business as well, which Russ, I want to tap your brain on here as well about this. Either one of you, really. But let's talk about some of the misconceptions, about the vintage market, if you would, or the retail market. Because the retail market can be volatile. whether it's
Mhm.
vintage or not. But what would you say are some of the myths that some people might walk into, whether it's looking to do, reselling, to do wholesaling, or vintage as a whole? What comes to mind?
Let's be real. Money flows where attention goes. But everything you seem to be using just isn't working. Paid advertisement, influencer marketing, the list goes on. So what do you do about that? Well, we got the answer for you. Over at the Boise Beat, we get hundreds of thousands of organic traffic coming in monthly, and we want to showcase you. So we're going to be offering primetime slots for up to 10 businesses to get your product, your service, your story out in front of the right demographic today. Sign up below.
Yeah, for me, I think there's a big misconception about the amount of work that people have to put in to run a vintage or retail kind of business, selling anything really. And yes, I would say it is easier, or I for sure say it's easier than like a blue collar, construction job, being out in the heat all day. But just a
Mm-hmm.
regular 9 to 5, I do think it is a little easier than that. Um, because there's a lot of nights, Cooper's got, he's got kids, he's got a wife. I'll be there soon. Where you're like, well, if I work another 2 hours, it's already 2 a.m. I can make another few $100, and you're sitting there listing clothes. You're trying to find clothes, and it's like more time is more money, and so you're just constantly it just becomes a
Mm-hmm.
habit of just making, listing, and it's not as easy as just finding something and then selling it.
Yeah.
I'll push back on your initial, just a little bit on your initial analysis of it being easier than a 9 to 5, and like construction, it's definitely easier than construction.
Yeah.
Like physically, it's much easier. But there's like no hours that you like
Yeah.
work from this to this. Like it is just a constant grind. Especially building your business, it's not just a 9 to 5. If I do this much work, it's going to be like this. It's literally like you're figuring out not just shopping, you're figuring out where to sell, how to sell, pictures, your cleaning, your accounting, your literally you run every aspect of the business
Mm-hmm.
until you get big enough and you can hire someone. I'm not that big yet, but I think it's a lot more like mentally taxing than a normal job. But I mean, physically, and I think it's a lot easier for us because we actually love it. Like it's a passion for us, and so it feels fun. But it is a ton of work.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I agree with you in the most part, but I had to just put that out there a little bit.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
No,
yeah. Love that.
I get it.
And I
Yeah, I
assume
get
you
it. So,
agree.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I might have misspoke when I said easier, but yeah.
No, you're good. You're
no,
good.
I think we get what you're saying. Easier in the sense of laborious physical
Yeah.
work, but as a whole, yeah, there's definitely a lot of pieces that go into running a business, which makes me think of also what you're doing is you're also having to leverage social media, right? Content creation. Um, how important is that part, the content creation side of things, in you know marketing what you're doing and getting people to pay attention to what you're doing? Because even though you're actively involved in the live shopping component, that's not the only um, arm, I guess you could say. That's not the only method that you're using to promote to people and show them what you're doing. What would you say is the importance of the content creation side of things in your personal branding and building your business as well?
Mhm.
I,
Yeah, I
I
can take on this. I
yeah,
and
please. You're more of the content creation side.
yeah,
I'm less. I'm not as good as Russell right now. I'm trying to build it up. I'm still an old man though. I have a brain.
yeah, it's tough, especially in the whole content creation kind of era.
Hmm.
Entertainment is like one of the biggest. There's a lot of economy going around that where people are just paying for streaming services and paying for TikTok is just paying people for views and yada yada yada. And I'm not in that space where I do it for views, but definitely in that marketing space. We're just getting my name out there, getting, because if there's not a buyer, there's not a sale.
Mhm.
And we sell on platforms like eBay and Depop and whatnot. And so the buyer is already there. We just have to make sure the product looks good. But when it comes to another big part of our business, both Cooper and I, is we sell at vintage markets locally.
Mhm.
And if there's not people there, if there's no marketing, no one's going to show up.
Right.
And so we've been at markets where I remember I just met Cooper at my first market. We were in Provo, Utah. And it was this great one. It was super cheap for us to get there, but it's like, comparatively to a couple $1,000s that we can make at a really good market, we're making, like maybe $100-$200.
Mm.
And it was just definitely based on marketing, and we were grateful to be there. But it's so important. The flyers, Instagram accounts, Instagram ads, vendors reposting, Facebook Marketplace. There's just infinite amount of like marketing opportunities, and it's crucial. It really is.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember it was around that time I did one, and there was like no marketing, no flyers or anything, and I didn't know that, but I went and literally 0 people came. There was 0 sales, and that was like 2 days after I had knee surgery. So I'm like hobbling around, like I gotta make money, and then I don't make anything. So, yeah, but it happens that way. You kind of got to be smart on which ones you decide to participate in. Sometimes it's a gamble, and like it's you just have to do it. And sometimes it's a really good market, but not as many people show up as last time you did that market, and so you don't make as much. But sometimes it's crazy. Like there was a market that Russell and I were a part of. I think it was last month, and last year they had 3 of them, and the most people that came to each one of them is like 2,000. And this time there were 7,000 people that came.
Oh wow.
It was like the best I've ever done, and I don't know if it's the best that Russell's ever done, but it's probably at least the highest, like one of the highest.
It was good.
It was incredible. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It speaks to, like, I guess in marketing vernacular, it would be the promotion side of it is what's actually your lead generator in a sense, right? It's building awareness, but without the people, there's no sale, and they go hand in hand. Marketing, sales, they go hand in hand, and so that's part of what you're exposing there, I would say. Russell, you've taken kind of an interesting approach with, I don't know, I'll call it a community centric approach in a way too, and it's interesting because ever since I've known you, as younger, you've done stuff that kind of tapped into the crowd, tapped into the community. And with this Cache Valley vintage market, that you're spearheading, I want to talk to you briefly about this as well, and how you're not only just promoting these events, you're actively a part of the ecosystem that's creating these community centric events where vendors can come together and they can benefit from what you're doing, and then you can kind of all benefit from one another, which leads into a larger conversation about community amongst business owners. But talk to me about the planning side of it, if you would, or being in that lane as a business owner, because you're not just selling content or selling product at the market, you're actually helping facilitate the creation of these markets.
No, yeah, totally. Just like I said, I'm in a family of entrepreneurs in business, and as much as I love vintage clothing, you can only have a max about how much vintage clothes you sell just by yourself, or it's a 6-figure business that I'd love to turn into a 7-figure business, but I have no idea how. And so branching off, starting my own markets and this community that I'm running, there are ways, yes, that I can bring more money into my pocket, but I think it's just the whole idea where a lot of the people that we work with, they're really good at what they do, but a lot of the times they're just funding their own fashion, or they're funding, just their little, weekend getaways. When, Cooper and I are, we're trying to, fund a life, fund, support, families, future families. And so I want to be able to work together with people, because in a flea market, yard sale kind of vibe, there's so much competition, so much trying to beat people to the block, when really it's actually pretty easy to work together and then soar together and just learn from each other and build businesses together and create more hype around a local area, or just to nationwide area of vintage clothing specifically. And so I created this, vintage market. One, because I live in Logan, Utah. There's Utah State College. There isn't really a vintage scene here besides, a few shops. And so the actual kind of getting out, getting a deal as a buyer, or just feeling the vibe, seeing people work at their hustle just on a Friday night is, something super fun. And then I can bring vendors out and they can, they can make their money too in a new area and so on. And this other thing I'm creating is trying to find a way to kind of unite everyone, especially those people that want to take a next step in their business and want to grow. And so that we can learn how to break that barrier between a, 6-figure business to a, to double, triple, ultimately turn into a 7-figure business or wherever it may take us.
Yeah, that's awesome. It speaks to the saying that I like to quote quite a bit whenever we're talking about collaboration. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Myron Golden. I listen to a guy named Myron Golden online. He has this saying. He has all these isms that he says that I kind of keep tabs on. One of them is, it's better to have, or I'd rather have 50% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape. And I believe that's so true. And people don't have the foresight to think that, hey, it's much better to leverage one another's skill sets, or, bring somebody in that is strong where you're weak and collaborate with each other, because there's more opportunity created when you come together, rather than thinking that you got to do this on an island. And anybody in entrepreneurship, you'll find out real quick that you'll burn out if you try to do everything by yourself. And if you don't bring in people to help in one way, shape, or form, it's going to be super difficult. And in this space, I would tend to think, I don't know the stats on it or anything like that, but I would tend to think that the burnout rate or the quit rate has to be probably pretty high, because the hustle is real and you got to be out there, actually doing this thing. So how do you guys stay motivated or stay inspired and I hate using the word hustle, kind of, sort of, but in a technically hustle heavy business or industry, what do you guys do, or how do you stay focused and motivated and inspired in this space? Is it purely because you love fashion, you love vintage, or is there something else?
For me, I think it's all about consistency, trusting the process. It's hard because a lot of people, they're like, if I list something online and it's a good item, it should sell like immediately, right? And it's not like that. It's sometimes you wait months, sometimes you wait a year. Not ideally, but that's why you pick the right product that sells fairly quickly. And fairly quickly on eBay is like within 90 days. And so it's like you have to be consistent in listing a lot every single day, and then build that pipeline, because I think that's the biggest thing outside of like going to markets and things like that. When you're listing online, it's just about building the pipeline, because you can list great items, but you're not getting that today. You're not getting that money back today. Most likely. I mean, sometimes you do, but so there's that aspect. And then I do love fashion. It's really good, but it's not as much of a motivator as, feeding my kids and my wife. That's a huge thing. It's like, whenever I get down and like discouraged, I first think my family's counting on me, and I got to make it work. And then I think, if I do a 9-to-5 job, I would hate it way worse than what I do now. and also, like Russell was saying, the opportunity of growth here is way more than you can get in a corporate job. It's about what you put into it. And with just having my baby and everything, this last year was really slow, just because, helping the wife and everything. So this should be our last baby. And so I feel like I
4
can
more later. We'll talk to you in 4 years and you get like 5.
shut your mouth. No, but then I'll have a lot more time to kind of build it and everything. But it's just about finding your why. If it's just a hobby, you're most likely not going to last when it gets hard. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing, is what you do when it gets difficult.
Yeah.
And running your own business, no matter what you do, it will get difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just about your next decision after that. So
Yeah. That's good. What about you, Russ?
No, I just kind of want to echo what he's saying. Cooper's been one of those kind of motivators and good influences for me. When I first met him, he just had that knee surgery, and so he was hobbling around in the heat. He just kept going, and then he's had kids. It's been a couple of years that we've worked together, and so it's just cool to see that he is taking on and he keeps pushing for it. I haven't seen him quit to a 9-to-5 job, even though I wouldn't judge him if he wants that stable income. But no, I totally agree. It's that hustle, where it's the more work you put in, the more money you make. And if you don't put any work in, you're not going to make any money, And so it's just the consistency. When I see, I sell mainly on Depop as my platform. And so if I sell consistently, I can have that stable income where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's at least this much that I know I can make. And so it becomes stable when people, sales usually isn't. But it all comes from that idea of just, well, okay, I'm stuck here. I'm the only one running this business, really. People are expecting me to make it in life. I'm just selling $15 t-shirts sometimes. It kind of gets overwhelming when I have 100 shirts. I'm like, well, technically, that's not as much money, but it is a lot of money. I just got to do the work.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. A little curveball for you here. I was going to ask you a closing question, but how do you find the gems? Like when you go to a spot, like what is there a secret to it? Like how do you find the gems? Like how do you find what people are actually looking for? Is it recon you're doing beforehand, and then you're out there scouting for stuff, or is it a gut feeling? Is that it? Like,
yeah, if I can, I'll just respond before Russ does. But it's, in my experience, it's always been knowledge, not in a cocky way or anything like that. But just like with any industry, the more knowledge you gain, the more opportunities that come to you. When people say, "Oh, you're so lucky," luck is like knowledge and opportunity,
mm-hmm.
and it's about seizing it. And I've gone to a thrift store middle of the day, so not even at the start of the day, middle of the day, and found an insane piece that most people are just like going past because they don't have the prior knowledge and to look for that. And so, and I still have so much knowledge I need to need to gain. I mean, it's kind of never ending with clothing. I also sell modern clothing too, like on eBay. That stuff sells well. So it's all about what sells well in the moment.
Yeah.
There are brands that when I first started sell really well, but now they don't sell very well. And so you have to pivot. You can't just buy the same item and expect it to sell the same amount as it did a year ago. It's not like that. But yeah, it's about gaining knowledge and also with markets and things like that. I feel like markets is much more of a style based than like resellable based, meaning like a lot of things I bring to the market aren't things that will sell for a lot on eBay. I just sold a pair of shorts that on eBay go for like 25, 30, and at a market I sold them for $45 because they're in style. So it's like it's
Getting on the market.
Yeah, exactly. And people are willing to pay more when they're in person and they like the product. Most of them aren't going to search through eBay
Right.
to find something like that. 'Cause a lot of them don't even know what to look for. So
Yeah. It's convenience they're paying for too. That's interesting.
no, yeah, I just want to echo that. It's totally that. I mean, kind of, we've been doing it for years now, literally years, going to thousands of thrift stores. Really, like I should be getting stock in Goodwill with how much money I've spent there. But,
straight up.
There is actually a Goodwill opening that happened here in Logan like a couple months ago, and I had to take a picture with the CEO because I was like, well, I deserve this. He was there opening. But no, I totally agree. It's knowledge. You know, like we can walk into a thrift store that's been hit all day with, you know, high school kids, and they're kind of looking for the, you know, good, like, you know, maybe like a Chicago Bulls shirt, or what's
Mhm.
really in is like surfwear, like Quicksilver stuff, or kind of like
Mhm.
the grungy style. Sure, they'll
Mhm.
find that. Yeah, they'll
Jingle
find all that.
jeans.
Yeah, Jinko pants. People go in there thinking they're going to find $200 pairs of pants when they
Mhm.
miss $400 worth of, you know, 20 items that we find. And we can even look at a rack and just like see a color of a shirt and just be like, okay,
Mhm.
that is the good material. It's not like some
Mhm.
Sheen or China fast fashion we know, and we can
Yeah.
pick it off. You know, like 99% sure that we can make money off it. But
Hmm.
it really goes back to just learning sales, because it's if you know your buyer and you know what sells to people locally, then you can basically sell anything to someone.
Yeah.
And so it's, I guess, you know, those gems, going back to your question, finding those gems, this comes back to that kind of hard work and just putting in more time and more knowledge, um, and just being able to take risks and branch out.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. Yeah. So for those of you that are listening, that are the next generation of resellers, creators, and entrepreneurs, I hope you're paying attention, because these two are dropping some game right here. And we've been talking about everything from understanding your market to sales and beyond. Go back and replay this if such. As a final plug for you fellas, I want to ask you, Cooper. I want to start with you real quick, and I'll plug it this way. If you could, what's one piece you got behind you that you'd be like, oh, this is a bomb piece of apparel that I got right here on your rack. I don't know
Let
if
me,
you can see them. Grab
yeah,
them for me if you
let
could.
me check it out real quick.
I'll grab one too.
All right.
Gotta zip it up real quick. It's probably isn't the most expensive item I have, but it's a brand that I like the most. Um,
Yeah, give me a little whatnot live shopping experience. Like, how would you show this?
so this is from the '90s. It's Polo Ralph Lauren.
Okay.
It's called a Harrington jacket, but most Harrington jackets, I mean, they're good, but this one, it's super nice one. Has the corduroy collar,
Mm,
and most of them are just a plain color, but it's called wax cotton, and then it has the plaid
So
on it.
cool.
mm,
Super crazy.
That's
wow.
crazy.
Yeah, very rare piece, and I literally found that at a Goodwill
Mm,
on half off day for $4. So
dang.
it's crazy, and
That's
that one goes for like 90 to 100. So
yeah.
it
That's a nice ROI right there.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of
What
my
you got,
favorites.
Russ?
Yeah, so he's got kind of the stuff that's actually, you know, should be worth a lot of money because of things. But I just at a yard sale got this blue
Ooh, nice.
Carhartt jacket.
Mm,
These are really in right now, and sure, they're worth a lot of money, you know, retail. But you know, they've been worn for like, you know, 20 years. You know, been beat
mm-hmm.
up. But just that sale. So this goes for, you know, a little over $100, you know, even close to 200 depending on your
Wow.
buyer.
Yeah.
But you know, you just know your market. I had to pay up a little bit for this just because
Sure.
yard sales nowadays aren't how they used to. It's still a good flip. And then
Yeah.
I'm also in my room, so I have some of my personals. But this is one of my dad's shirts from way back in the day.
Oh, sweet.
That
So
has, you
crazy.
know, Michael
So
Jordan,
crazy.
Charles Barkley, and Scottie Pippen.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
And
grail.
so that's one of the things that, you know, sparked the whole journey.
I'll tell your dad back in 1920.
Yeah, exactly.
So honestly, to hit on one more thing, Carhartt is a crazy enigma in the vintage reselling community. It's just crazy because it's been around for so long, and just in the past like 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
it has really become a huge, like, workwear has become a huge fashion statement. I think
Mm-hmm.
since like Kanye West and Travis Scott
Mm-hmm.
um and on Interstellar, the Coop was wearing it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like really went crazy. And so and it's weird because sometimes the more thrashed it is, the
Mm-hmm.
more it'll sell for, which is crazy. Like
Oh.
Yeah.
People just want to look like they've been working.
Yeah, make it look like they've been working. That's funny.
Yeah,
It's
without
crazy. It
actually-
really is. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. Well, this has been fun, fellas. Thank you so much for jumping on here. Cooper, where can people find you if they're looking to get the hookup here and get plugged in with you? Where can they get you?
Instagram, and whatnot, and eBay. It's all CJ's Vintage Vault. And yeah, that's it. I'm still trying to build up social media, but follow me and I'll post new cool things that I got.
Yeah, that's what's up. How about you, Russ? Where can everybody find you at?
I'd say definitely go follow his first, but
Stop.
it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny because we kind of have the same name, but mine's vintage_vault Logan on most platforms.
Nice. That's what's up. Well,
Crazy,
fellas,
we're both Vintage Vault.
both Vintage
Yeah,
Vault,
it's
Vintage
crazy.
Vault Deuce.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's awesome. Fellas, thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing knowledge with everybody here today. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
You got it.